Hello and welcome to Manibil. This is a small comment or deconstruction even of a small comment or question I asked in a live feed on a place called Pangburn or a channel called Pangburn, which last night or yesterday had an Ask Me Anything with Bernardo Kastrup. And I don't know. I was searching for some, on YouTube, and this one popped up in my recommendations, and it was just going live as I found it. So I wrote, okay, I think I'll write a question, right, just to see if I can get some traction here, right? And so I did, and with some 17 and 40 something 7 minutes and 14 seconds or so into it, the showrunners presented my question to Bernardo Kastrup, and I will sort of like to reflect a bit on that, right? Okay, and I take this opportunity to sort of maybe talk a bit about the shortcomings of Bernardo Kastrup's philosophy. But first of all, let me plug the channel, which is Pangburn, and they have more than 100,000 subs, which is quite incredible. If I had just 1% of that on top of my own, I wouldn't mind. So if you can help me get a little more traction, if you think I'm doing something that is good philosophy here, well, please share and find something maybe on my channel you think this is really good and share it with somebody else so I sort of can create some traction, right? It's like I don't mind having 230 subs or something like that, right? I appreciate every single one of them, right? It's like every time I get a new sub, it's like, yay, one more, right? If you're in the 100,000 subs realm, it's sort of, okay, if you don't get 1,000 new ones this week, it's sort of a bad week or something like that, right? It's a good week if I get one new sub, right? And I appreciate it, everyone, because my channel is so low-key and so, handheld and sort of hardcore pure philosophy rather than licking your ear with sophist language, right? Or giving you what I think you need or what you want, and something like that, the Stefan Molyneux approach. So if you're sticking around, it's because you're really into philosophy and not any other kind of associated bullshit, right? So that I appreciate. So in that sense, I would rather have 230 hardcore philosophy geeks than 20,000, half-blind people following me because I'm licking their ears, right? So, if you get my meaning right. But I think there might be more than 230 deeply philosophically interested people out there. So if you don't mind helping me get out on the steps and on the pampas, on the philosophical pampas, and get a hold of these people, that would be nice. So thank you very much, right? Okay, Pangburn, as I said, is the channel's name, so go give them some love. And my question was, and I was, you can possibly see it here in the window, it should be over here to the right. And my question was, if I have only ever experienced my living room and I fabulate on a potential realm outside, would it make sense to call it living room at large, or would I just be extending things without basis? Now, I think, of course, this is an analogy that leans sort of criticizes or take a stab at his idea of mind at large, right? And the little problem I have with how they dealt with the problem in the presentation here is that the showrunner who sort of presented my question didn't quote it directly, reading out loud, right? Rather, he sort of, it's about this and it's about that, right? Which made it more fluffy and potentially confused Bernardo Kastrup a bit. But let's head into what he said and let's take it from there, right?
To find a vague analogy and then to say that on the basis of that very vague analogy, on a very high level of abstraction, both should be conscious is preposterous. It's just irrational.
Gotcha. And we have this being streamed on YouTube as well. So I've got a YouTube question someone's asking. It's from Mandeville, I believe is the name. It says, if I only ever have experience of my living room, it's like the only like potential realm that I've ever had outside of myself. Would it make sense to call it living room at large, or would I just be like extending things without basis?
So this is a bad, way of presenting somebody's question, right? He is trying to interpret what I'm asking about, right? He thinks, no, this is some idiot who has written something and trying to put words together, and I just have to try to, improve the question so that my, the big mind Kastrup, he won't say, oh no, what a weirdo question. No, I have to make it great because he's probably a stupid person, right? That's how I feel about it, right? Now, why don't you just present the question explicitly as it's written, rather than trying to... This is what the questioner or the guy or person questioning wants to... It's not what they have written, but this might be what... Just out of the blue, he just changes the question a bit, or at least under the pretense of improving it or something like that, right? That's annoying to me, really.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but that's what they're asking.
But I'm not asking you, right? You're not the one who has to understand the question, right? Ask the question to Bernardo Kastrup and let him see if he can understand it, right? So you're already sort of creating an idea that this guy is probably quite stupid. He can't even ask a decent question, right? That's fucking annoying.
I'm not sure I understand the question either, or the relevance of the question.
I think they're...
Now, of course not, because he didn't read the question, right? He read half of the question and then sort of... Right? Read out the fucking question, man.
Making a comment on...
I'm sorry if this...
On maybe the concept of mind at large.
So now he is interpreting my... First of all, he says he doesn't understand my question. And he doesn't quote my question. And then he starts to interpret what it might be that I'm actually trying to ask, rather than just reading the fucking question out loud, right? That's fucking annoying.
That you talk about.
I'll give an answer. I'm not sure it's the answer to this question, because I'm not sure I understand the question, but it probably is related. We always have to make an inference beyond our personal experience.
Why do we have to do that? Why are you saying we? Why are you not saying I? Right? Why are you not saying I have to do this? You are immediately jumping into some kind of collectivism that says we. Who are those we? Right? And why do we have to? Am I a part of those we? Or are you just... all those who agree with me, you are in that we. Unless you don't agree with me, then you're outside that we. Or what? Are you some kind of, God descending on earth and telling people, this is how we have to do it? Now, there's a big problem in that, because that's not philosophy, right? That's not philosophy. He's not presenting philosophy here, right? He's presenting some kind of conclusion that might not even be based on philosophy. Because the philosophy is the string of arguments that leads to some kind of conclusion. That might be something like that. We have to do this and we have to do that. So he's just basically jumping over the mind of the problem of other minds, right? And even, and we might get into that maybe a bit later here, but I'm taking it now so I don't forget to say it, right? Now, what he's dealing with is sort of the idealistic approach to your experience, right? That your experiences are your experiences before you start to analyze them or categorize them or, anything like interpret them, right? They're just, what are they then, right? There are colors, there are sounds, and there's taste and so on. And then there's sort of your emotions and your philosophies and whatever, right? But that's on the other side of the screen, so to say, right? That's something that is purely within you, right? The colors and sounds and so are also within you, right? But it's before you start to interpret them, there is no there is nothing inherently it doesn't come with an interpretation. That's why you're doing metaphysics, in my opinion. Now we might discuss what do we mean by metaphysics, and there seem to be different ideas what it means. In my opinion, when you start to classify these experiences, you are doing metaphysics, right? Otherwise, you just have to say colors, sounds, whatever, right? Or I have to say, I could say, right? When I start to clarify or classify or interpret it, then I'm doing the metaphysics. Now, if at some point I say, this part of my experience is something outside my experience, I am potentially creating a paradox, right? Because if it's a part of my experience, it's not outside my experience. If it's within the experience. So if I'm saying that shelf over there, right? That Blu-ray movie over there, looking at my film collection, that Blu-ray is outside my mind, right? Mind is sort of a catch-all, area where all these colors and sounds and emotions and so on goes on, right? If I'm saying that Blu-ray is outside my mind, what am I actually saying? Because if I'm referring to a Blu-ray, I'm referring to some kind of color or something like that, right? I can taste it, I can hear it, I can feel it, I can smell it, I can see it, right? So it's a kind of color. If it's a kind of color, it's an experience, so it must be within my mind. So why am I saying it's outside my mind if I'm referring to an experience? That must be within my mind then, right? So it isn't outside my mind. So why am I doing that? Why am I creating this idea of an outside? Now, that's what he says. Of course there is an outside, right? And we have all those experiences and colors and sounds that he refers to as this collective term called we, which is there are other individuals just like me having the same kind of experience. He says it just like that. He just states it as an axiom, but he has to do that because he can't say it's outside because all of what he refers to is something inside. The idea of the outside is purely an abstraction. It's purely an idea. I'm not saying that it merely being idea does mean that there isn't something outside. But if there is something outside, you cannot get to it. The actual outside, you can merely stay with your experiences, your abstractions, your ideas, and so on. So how do you get to say, okay, there is an outside? You can only do that by saying, this experience of mine, I will classify as something that represents something outside. That's an axiom. You cannot reason your way to that outside. You can only reason your way to saying, I have some weird experiences. I'm not in control of those experiences. It seems like whenever I open my eyes, it's there, and when I close my eyes, it isn't there. My eyes seems to be sort of, there seems to be an outside, something like that, but it's an interpretation of your inner experiences. Or your experience. If I'm saying inner, I'm already presupposing something, right? So I shouldn't say that. The jump to an interpretation is axiomatic. You can't reason your way to it as if, of course, it's the case, right? You cannot do that. If you're doing that, you're doing bad philosophy, in my opinion. What you can do is state the axiom. I am working from the idea when I'm having these kinds of experiences. I treat that as a representation of something outside. That's what you can do. That's not what he's saying, right? He's saying something like, of course there's a we. There's all of you, and you have your emotions and your thoughts and so on. Of course it's the case. How do you get to that, of course? It's just because he needs it to be, right? So he's just jumping into it and saying, well, of course. As if saying, of course, is great philosophy. It isn't. It's fucking stupid, right? And you are basically tricking people to accept you having access to that outside realm without them having access to it. So that they will always come back and ask you, what do you think is out there, right? And that's exactly what he wants. He wants to be that kind of mystic telling you, well, too bad you can't go there, right? But I can, there are ripples out there, right? I have some kind of abstract access to that realm out there. You can't experience it. And that's exactly the problem, because you can't verify what he's talking about using your experiences, right? He is violating the need for an axiom that you can say, I'm not going with that axiom. And then you can reject his philosophy, right? If you agree upon the axiom, then you can agree on that, and then you can take the next step until you reach the next axiom or definition or whatever, and then you can agree or disagree on that, right? He's basically manipulating you into accepting that he can tell you what the hell is out there, right? While at the same time, he has also often said, you have no access to it. Now, if he doesn't have any access to it, why doesn't he state that you have no access to it and you shouldn't fabulate about it? All you should say is, I cannot know anything about it, right? So he's basically a sophist manipulator. He's kind of a mystic priest, right? Who, as I said before, he wants to disarm you into, well, you can't go there, right? But, I'm an authority. I have the papers, right? I have done the thinking. So you have to get into my audience and, listen to me. I'm on a world tour of idealism here, right? Fuck off, man.
If we don't do that, we are solipsists. We will say, well, all that exists is my personal experience.
Saying we are solipsists, that's an inherent contradiction, right? Isn't that what's called an oxymoron? When you are stating two things in the same sentence that are sort of contradictory. The married bachelor, right? There's no we if you're a solipsist, so you can't say we are solipsists, right? There is no we if you're a solipsist, so you can't say we are solipsists, right? So he's tangled up in some kind of, he is very concerned about not saying, this is my philosophy. I am like this. I'm thinking like this. I'm working from this axiom. I am working from this ethics. I am working from this understanding of knowledge. I am working from this objectivity. I am working from this kind of truth, right? No, he's saying we have, and we have to do this, and you have to think like this, and we are in this category, now we, and we, and we, and we, and we, right? He's a collectivist. He's a preacher. He wants to stand there and say, hey, we. But you can't do it alone. But if we are we, there's a we, then I can be the authority on the ripples out there and tell you about it. Fuck off.
As Bernardo Kastrup, everybody else I see exists only insofar as my experience of them. In other words, other people do not have their own conscious in their lives. They are just appearances.
Well, no. Just because you can't experience it, you cannot say that it doesn't exist and it isn't the case and so on. You have to start to learn to say, I can't get to it, right? It's this sort of, I have to have direct access and to say, then I know it, right? And if I can't get direct access, it means I doesn't know it, or I know that it isn't the case. No, it's in between where you say, I cannot get to it. That makes you a bit humble and go back and say, what I really have is my own experience. That doesn't necessarily make you a solipsist. The trick is to say, I am going to work with my experience, my inner experiences as representations of that which is outside. That's an axiom I'm willing to go with. And if you're willing to go with the same axiom, great, let's work together. If you over there do not want to go with these axioms, fine, let's not work together, right? So we have a ground floor, sort of working up from that, rather than somebody sitting there saying, I have seen the light. There are ripples out there in the mind, subjective mind at large. You're just an insignificant little speck, but I've been speaking to the big mind out there. And he says, you need to obey me and pay taxes.
And those appearances are being created by my mind. That's solipsism. A solipsist is the only person who will not make any inference beyond his or her own direct personal experience.
Fine. Why would I have anything against that? If you want to be a solipsist, fine. In my experience, nobody works like that. It seems to me when I have experience with, if I make that axiom where I say that kind of experience is my experiential representation of something, an entity, an individual, whatever term, right? It's about finding good terms when we're doing, metaethics, which can be quite hard, right? Let's say another individual, right? I am going to extend that they have the same kind of mind as I have, the same kind of experience. If I experience cow as an external, right? And I'm saying it's an external, by definition, by what follows from that is, if that's an individual beside it, that individual will have the same kind of experience. I can't get to it, but I can state from axioms that that's what I'm working from, right? But I'm careful to say, these are my axiom. This is my axiom. These are my axioms. I am not presenting it as, this is how it is, as he does, right? You don't need to think for yourself, little people. I'm an authority. I'm here to tell you how it is. Just like Jesus, right? I've been speaking with the big mind out there, right? He's my father. I'm 4.5, father. Oh, there's a good clip with a guy called Bill Hader. You probably know him. He's sort of a Saturday Night Live, I think, and some funny movies and so on, where he says about his daughter who's 2 years old, saying she's 4.5, and then he does it in this kind of Schwarzenegger kind of 4.5, father. He's quite funny. Okay, enough of that. How far did we get? Let me carry on.
Am I a solipsist? No. I think we need to make inferences beyond our...
We need to. Then again, is this we? Speak for yourself, man, right? Now you feel like you're a spokesperson for everybody else? Who the hell do you think you are, man? Just because you don't want to be a solipsist, and which might increase your, anxiety levels, and you need so much medication that you can't even see straight, right? You don't want it to be. So I'm just I'm forcing myself to think that there must be something out there, right? That's not good philosophy. You need to show the steps you take there from point A to point B to point C and how you get there. And if you can't reason your way there somehow, right? You need to make some axioms saying, I am working from the axiom that XYZ, right? No, it's just, but we need to. I don't like to be solipsist. So we are all in this something else that I like much better, right? Fuck off.
Personal experiences to account for certain observations of reality. For instance, if you were here sitting in my study next to me, you would describe my study in a way consistent with my own experience of it.
How the fucking hell do you know that, right? And I hesitate to call it knowledge. How do we have any idea that that would be the case? You're just creating something like a straw man or something. I don't know what to call it. Of course you would do that. Yes. Oh, you don't even have to get to the Netherlands and sit beside me and tell me about my room. We agree that that would be the case, right? So we don't even have to have actual experience to agree on. He can just tell you how it is, right? He's sort of in this sort of authoritarian mindset that because he thinks apparently of himself as somebody who has reached a level of insight where he basically can tell people how to think, right? That's very dangerous, in my opinion. You have to appeal to people's own ability to think. Otherwise, it will never work. You will become some kind of, authoritarian, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, choose your poison, right? And I'm bidding a bit hard here, right? But why not pull the totalitarian card, right? Because they were all in this kind of, I know what's right for everybody kind of mode, right? You can't think for yourself, you little peasant, right? Like, Adolf Hitler said that the crowds are feminine. They need to be dominated and told what to think, right? Something like that. Now, it's not that explicit in this case, but I'm always pulling the Nazi card and the communist card and the totalitarian card, right? Whenever I see this, it's always about rousing the masses, right? You are like this. You have these needs. You don't need to think. You are just like this, you little man-child, right? Rather than saying, no, you go and come up with some fucking philosophy and then let us discuss it, right? That would be the right approach. You go and think for yourself, right? And if you can't come back to me and say, I thought about it and I've come up with this, and we can discuss it and get to some kind of common ground, or say we can't get to a common ground and leave each other peacefully, right? Otherwise, it will be some kind of collectivist scare scenario in the end, right? This is what it's always like this, right? Way back from Plato, you have to be married to these people, and the children have to go there, and these people have to go here, and if the kings can't be philosophers, philosophers need to be the kings and rule everything, right? Fuck off, man.
In other words, we would both seem to be inhabiting the same world beyond ourselves. And that happens every day when we talk to other people, when we go to work, when we have a meal, when we watch the news. We take it for granted that we and other people, we are all inhabiting.
I don't take anything for granted, right? Don't use that we. Why is it so hard to say, I am working from this, and just stay with that? Just say, well, I'm working from this, right? And then people might reject it or be inspired or something like that. But you are shanghaiing people's thinking into, of course, there's a we. We all do this, right? Yes, I don't have to explain anything. I don't have to do philosophy. I just say, we are all like this. Done, right?
A common world beyond our personal selves. And I think that's valid. I think that's obviously the case. So we have to infer some kind of global structure to account for this shared world. And this global structure is beyond our...
It's a global structure, right? And what the hell? I was talking about, I know he screwed up my question, right? I'm just talking about how do you get to extend your own experience to being call it mind, for instance, and then extend it to everybody else. I'm reminding myself there was a point I wanted to get across that I sort of missed because I went on a tangent. But from this, he is saying there is a mind out there. Okay, let me back up a bit. He's saying I'm having experiences. And he's talking about that we is as if he can talk about we before he classifies what the hell is going on beyond those experiences, right? As if those we are disconnected from that experience also. So he's disconnected from a mind at large where these we's, these other individuals are also disconnected from that mind. So he's talking about something that is beyond something that is beyond something, right? So he's disconnected from the mind at large, and you, as somebody outside his mind and mind at large, is also disconnected from both him and the mind at large, right? Yet he can tell you about it, right? Doesn't it seem far-fetched to you, right? I'm not saying that you can't state some axioms where you could follow that thread to some extent, right? That's potentially what I'm doing. But I'm clearly stating this is an axiom, and I'm building from my own experiences. I am not presenting it as if I have some magical woo-woo inside. Oh, there's a mind out there, right? I understand that the trick he uses is to say, okay, I don't want to get into some dualism where there are two kinds more, there's two or more kinds of stuff, right? If it's all mind, I'm just extending my own mind to mind out there also. So I haven't conjured up, new stuff, right? And in his world, that's how you do it, because then you're sort of, I have access to mind. And if I'm saying it's also mind out there, I haven't created something new. No. But he is extending something beyond his own experience. That's a big, big leap, in my opinion. You can't do that because he is basically saying, I know that it's also mind out there. How would you know that? You would have to have experience of it in order to call it mind. He doesn't, so he can't say it's mind, right? All he can say is, I have no fucking clue what it is, right? But he doesn't want to go there because then he feels he's a solipsist, and then he will have to say, this is my experience. He doesn't want that. He wants to say we, so he can be the mystic preacher, right? Telling all these we how to think. Otherwise, he would always have to say, I am working, I am having this experience, I am this, me, right? I'm not saying it's sort of an egotistical way, but you have to start somewhere. You can't work from a we and then say, hey, therefore you have to do, right? Which is always what happens, is that we are all in this, oh, there's somebody over there who's not obeying the we, right? We can't have individualism, this rocket individualism. Let's get rid of it by calling it a we, right?
Or personal experience. It's something that would still exist even if we were not here to experience it. I think that's valid. But notice that to infer the...
It's also when using the term we, it seems more powerful. It seems more authoritative than saying I. Because then the follow-up will be, okay, then it's just you, right? You're not talking about me, then it's just you then. So I would have to think for myself if I was listening to Bernardo Kastrup saying I. It would actually encourage people to think for themselves if everybody said, I am having this experience, I am working from this axiom, right? Because then it was my philosophy. this kind of imposing your personal philosophy as everybody's philosophy, right? That is a sophist trick as old as it gets. And I'm very, very, very observant of this little trick, right? Because it's everywhere. Whenever you read some philosophy, it's always we, right? Or some kind of synonym to we. It's never I am working from this. This is my philosophy. These are my axioms. These are my definitions. That's what I'm working with, right? It's always trying to rally the masses into sort of confining or maybe to cover up the weaknesses in your philosophy. So if there's a lot of people following me and accepting my shitty philosophy, it sort of becomes a good philosophy. Just like the sort of this democratic fallacy that if we are a majority of people who think has this opinion, it suddenly becomes truth or moral or ethical or something like that, which is the most stupid fucking idea, right? So postering yourself with numbers of people in order to maybe reject those who can actually think for themselves. Because thinking for yourself is basically starting from solipsism and then work from there, right? If you're a solipsist, you just stay with your experiences. If you start to axiomize your way to understanding of an outside and so on, okay, then you're no longer a solipsist, but you're not just saying, as Bernardo says, of course there is a mind out there, and because you exist, and of course you have a mind, and of course we would agree on this, and of course. It's the most fucking stupid philosophy to say, of course. That's not philosophy, and he should be above that, in my opinion. I don't get why he thinks that. It's because, either it's possibly a combination of he doesn't understand that he needs to do that, and he sort of, if I could do it, the little people wouldn't understand it, so I have to dumb it down to them and sort of force feed them this acceptance of this we thing, right? Okay.
Existence of something beyond our personal experience does not require that this thing be.
Again, this, I know it's a matter of the terms used and so on, right? And what terms do you use? But our personal, right? Our personal experience, there's no our personal. Either it's personal or it's our. If it's our, it's not personal, right? He's blurring the lines here between the idea of the collective and the individual. Now, whenever somebody wants to eradicate the individual, be fucking careful, right? I went on a limb and comparing him to sort of some very, bad apples in the 20th century, right? But it always starts somewhere, right? It starts somewhere and escalates into crazy people taking over at some point, right? We have to get rid of this fucking collective thinking. We have to get down to people have to fucking think for themselves. This collective shit is going to just keep things rolling in these stupid avenues. Like, Joe Biden knows what's good for 350 million people, man.
Different from experience itself as a kind, as a type of existent. In other words, the world may still be beyond our personal minds, but it may still be mental. It's a mental world constituted of experiences that are beyond.
See the trick there? It may be mental. Okay, so he can't say it is mental, right? And then he jumps into saying, pretending as if it's now settled that it is mental, right? See the tricks he uses. I mean, I'm calling it a trick. He might not be aware that he's tricking you. Then I don't know if it's dangerous or just stupid, right? Doesn't matter because people are apparently eating this raw. right?
Beyond my personal experiences. It is of the same type as my personal experiences, but it is not constituted of my personal experiences alone. To understand this, just imagine the thoughts of another person. Imagine my thoughts. I am having thoughts right now. My thoughts are beyond your personal mind. My thoughts are external to your personal mind. Even if you were not around listening to me right now, I would still be having my thoughts. My thoughts would still exist. My thoughts are objective from your perspective in the sense that you
Objective? He hasn't defined what he means. I think that objectivity is a very, very important term to get a very good grasp of what we mean by we say objective. But because it seems to me in general, people say that objectivity is sort of a better classification of insights than subjectivity, right? I'm not taking that discussion maybe at the moment how I approach that, but just saying my thoughts are objective even if you're not here or something like that, right? He's using a big term that is not clarified. He just slaps it on his talking here, right? It is what makes it objective. What is it about whatever you experience that is objective? If I'm saying I'm having an experience of blue, right? And then you say, well, it's objective. What is it about it that makes you classify it as objective? Because I just classified it as blue, right? So what is it that makes it objective? And if I say it's an elephant, and you say, okay, it's objective, what is it about the elephant that all of a sudden makes it objective, right? You can't just slap on a new word that maybe come with a baggage of understandings because you're slapping that word on it, right? You're bringing in the understandings that you haven't clarified in the first hand, right? So you have to get rid of the term objective and stay with the term elephant. You can't just upgrade it without any justification. This is the kind of sophistry that I'm sick and tired of, in my opinion, right? Because at these levels, when they take these big leaps without any clarification or definitions or justifications, be fucking careful, right?
You cannot change my thoughts merely by wishing them to be different or imagining them to be different. My thoughts would still be whatever they are, regardless of your wishes and imaginations. So my thoughts are external to you, but they are still thoughts.
Now he is talking to his own experience as if that experience has its own mind, and then talking to mind, and that's mind telling that mind that you can't get to my mind, right? Now this is sort of a gumbo of all sorts of built-in axioms or axioms that need to be there in order to justify his ability to talk about these things, right? He needs to state these axioms. Otherwise, you shouldn't. I'm telling you, right? I would not take this seriously. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Without these justifications, he can't do that. That's why he needs philosophy. He needs to present his philosophy so you understand how he gets to do it. He just does it and talks to you as if it's settled, right? And because he takes this giant leap at the beginning, he's sort of free to tell you whatever he wants about that world out there, right? And that's what he wants to get to. He wants you to not see the giant leap he takes without any justifications, philosophical justifications, so he can go and talk to you about the big mind out there and eventually sort of become this preacher, the spokesperson for this mind out there, which is what I'm seeing, right? And then he's in a situation where he has the insight, but you are just a little peasant who is stuck with their experiences, right? But because he has this authority and these papers that says he's a philosopher and, whatever, he can tell you about that outside, right? Be fucking careful.
They are still mental, just like your thoughts. my thoughts are of the same kind as your thoughts. So what
Well, how the hell do you know? Oh, because you had that invisible axiom that of course there is an outside. It's of the same kind. You can never get to that. Just like that, as if you're saying it, as if you're reasoning in a way that it's obvious it's the case. Of course it's not obvious, because you have stated that you only have your experiences, man. You only have your experiences. And then in the next second you're saying you are having the same kind of experience outside my experience. Why don't you accept that you can't get to it and say, I can't get to it, but I'm working from this axiom. State the fucking axiom very clearly, very rigidly, and saying an axiom is something we have to agree on before we can start to agree on the next bit of philosophy. And if you disagree on that axiom, fine, then we are not discussing further into this philosophy. But he wants to circumvent it and sort of just bring you along into his philosophy. So you're sort of stuck in his mental stuff, right? Way beyond what he can actually claim.
What analytic idealism says is that there is an external world. It is objective from our personal perspectives. It is outside.
I would like to have a fucking definition of this objectivity. It is objective. How does that follow? What color does objectivity have? What sound does it have? What taste does it have? And so on, right? What is it? It's an idea in your fucking head, man. You can't just slap that idea on some experience and say, now, look, it's objective. You have to define what you mean, man. Right? And if you can't do that, I'm not taking it seriously. I'm rejecting it outright, right? Don't just slap some kind of objectivity in my face as if it's given to me. Just because you feel that it's given to you doesn't make it given to me. Oh man, the more I dive into this, I mean, yes, I agree with him on that. We are working from our experiences first, right? We are working from an idealist approach. But then he sort of just jumps into this world out there as if it's sort of almost like it's given to you. Of course I can access it, right? Though I'm disconnected from it, I can tell you about it, and I can tell you about you out there who's out there beyond my experience, and actually beyond that mind at large also, disconnected from it, right? Dissociated, or whatever term he uses, right? And then telling it that it's the same thing they're experiencing. He's basically just saying, I don't give a fuck about the problem or the minds. I'm just going to, state it like that, right? Without clarifying, hey, hang on. I am stating I'm working from an axiom here. This is what I'm working from. You don't have to work from that. We don't have to agree on that. If we agree, fine. If you don't agree, let me hear your point. Let me see if I have done something wrong. Or I'll stick to my axiom and go from there, right? That's how you build it. No, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to, throw around words to lure you into thinking that he has some kind of special access to something. And he's sort of an authority of the mind at large, right? Because if he can't, his world, rock show stops there. His world tour of the Mind at Large world tour, right, stops there. And the Illusion Foundation, Essential Foundation, is just bullshit, right? He's sort of the priest of the mind out there, the mind at large priest. And he's on a world tour telling everybody this is how it is, right? If he has to say, this is my fucking axiom, no matter how many agree with me on my axiom, they're just using the same axiom for their existence, right? It's still your axiom.
Individual minds, but it is mental. It is constituted of mental states.
Mental states. Okay, so mental can be in whatever different kinds of states, right? How do you get to those different kinds of states, right? Is it just you? That's the point I'm so fucking tired of, right? he has opened the door, jumped out into that which you cannot experience, right? And then he's going to talk about all sorts of abstractions and, analogies and metaphors of ripples and God knows what, right? And you can't go and check it because you do not have access to it or experience of it. So he can roam free and come up with all sorts of shit that he wants to be there, to self-medicate his sense of anxiety. So he gets less anxious by, it's just mind, and there are ripples, and then everything is a field of ripples, and then everything is settled, and I don't have to be anxious then, right?
That are different from yours and mine, but they are mental too. They are of the same kind as my mental states and your mental states. That's...
So what, right? You're just labeling, okay, I have my mind, there's something outside my mind, I can't get to it, but I'm going to say that it's all mind, and therefore you are the same as my mind, because I work from this axiom that I've created. So he's building upon an axiom and building a new axiom upon that, and a new axiom upon that, without clarifying that that's what he's doing. He's presenting it implicitly, as if it sort of follows, right? Sort of this sophist half-ass pretending it to be reasoning or philosophy, which it isn't, right? Just be careful with this.
How idealism is not solipsism. It does not entail that the world is in your personal mind. No, the world is out there, but it is of the same kind as your mental processes.
It's of the same kind? So it's also mental processes? So what is the difference between mind and mental processes? What's a process? Is that also a mind? So he's sort of, okay, it's all mind, but then he's sort of classifying mental processes and all sorts of classifications of that mind. How does he get to, first of all, he can't just say it's all mind, because he can't get to that, right? Okay, and then he starts to say, but there are all kinds of stuff going on there, right? There are ripples and excitations, and there are classifications and mental states, and all. Sort of start to go into, okay, then I'm starting to classify that which I do not have access to. Just like that. It's fucking crazy, man. Fucking crazy. The world is run by crazy people, man. Ah. Oh my fucking God. Ah. Now you see, if I start to reject what he's saying, right, I'm actually poking at his mind at large. I'm a part of that mind at large. He wants to be in control of all that, because that sort of, inhibits his anxiety. So in a way, he can control all the individuals who are soaked in this mind out there, right? They have to obey that mind in order to not be too sort of free will or something like that. So they might do something he doesn't want, which creates anxiety, right? So I can help thinking that it is a self-medication and trying to convince people to obey this kind of mind thing in order to make them obedient, so that he can rest and feel less anxiety of some kind, right? Otherwise, why would he in his Twitter feed, shout at Putin and, also at Trump and I don't know? Because if it's the mind out there and he has no access to it and no control over it, why the fuck is he yelling at it, right? If he's yelling at it, he must expect it to be changed somehow, right? So he can influence that which is out there, right? That might be the same he's doing when he's trying to soak you in this mind at large, and you're just some insignificant dissociation of that mind at large, which is the big control guy out there, right? So he's basically, in a way, talking to his big, daddy, big daddy outside mind there, right? Just like Jesus, and saying, would you please, do this to these people over there? so they can behave, so I don't feel anxious because I'm a bit crazy, you know. There is something like that, right? In recent years, I have come to realize that it seems to me, or at least it seems to me, that a lot of these outspoken so-called philosophers, they're basically just self-medicating themselves with philosophy. They are exposed fact to justifying whatever they need in order to feel less anxiety about their existence, right? And the best example is Stefan Molyneux, who's completely out of his rails in his shitty philosophy that is so stupid. It's actually incredible, right? He's just self-medicating himself to stay sane. Because he's crazy, right? It's all these crazy people who have no self-criticism, who's out there telling people how things are, right? It's all the crazy people running things. How do you get away from crazy people running things? By appealing to your individual thinking. If you can't think for yourself, you shouldn't influence somebody else because they want to be individualist, right? So that if you want to get the crazy people to run things, you need to put them into a we or a society or a global whatever, and this big thing that we're all a part of, something like that, right? That sort of eliminates their will to be individual thinking people. Now, in this scenario, I know where I put Bernardo Kastrup. I put him in the collectivist individuality eradicating group rather than one who appeals to the individual ability to think, right? The Essentia Foundation, basically a big club and you're not in it, right? Just like Carlin talked about, it's a big club and you're not in it, right? It's a club of, aristocratic kind of intellectuals, right? Academics. You have to have papers, right, to be a part of the Essentia Foundation, which is sort of the big club you can't be a part of because you are not. We can't have individualism. We can't let the little people think for themselves. We have to make a group of specialist authority who go around telling people this is how it is, right? Fuck off, man.
I think maybe if someone thinks that, they might be closer to like a Berkeleyan sort of idealism where there's not going to be something behind the perceptions. Whereas, as I understand, if I understand correctly, you're closer to in the line of thought of like Kant. In your sort of reasoning, and I want to ask about this world outside of ourselves. If it's like it has conscious states. Is it like?
Yeah, if it has, right? If it has, it's still this sort of implicit appeal to axioms. Why don't you fucking state the axioms, right? What is your philosophy, young man, right? What is your philosophy? Present your philosophy. Present your metaphysics, your axioms, your definitions. What are they? It's always this midstreams kind of, dropping the right terms and name dropping philosophers and so on to sound like you're wise and smart and have read some books. I don't give a crap about it, right? Show me your fucking philosophy. Show me your axioms. Show me your definitions and the philosophy to get there. Right? Please. Otherwise, I don't really care much, right? Because I have my own philosophy to take care of.
Self-aware? Does it know it is a being? Does it have knowledge?
See, it's exactly my point. He can't do it himself, right? He can't get there because he can't experience it. So he has to ask the priest, right? That's what Bernardo Kastrup, that's the situation he wants to be in. Where people can't get to it themselves, so they have to go and interview him. They have to ask Jesus, what is God saying, right? Be fucking aware of this, right? Please be skeptical, man. I can appeal. I can tell you what to do. Do your own thinking and let me know about it, right? Please.
Knowledge, those sorts of things.
Now, I think I got my point across, right? He basically just told you what I'm saying implicitly, right? He cannot do it himself. That's exactly what the scenario that Bernardo Kastrup creates. You are stuck with your experiences You can't reason your way, but because I have the papers and I'm smart and I'm authority, I can sort of jump. I can go through the door and go in and look. I'm not looking, but I'm what is he doing? He's not looking, right? He is fabulating about that world out there because he simply cannot leave it alone. Otherwise, he will feel such an, overpowering sense of anxiety about that which he cannot get to, that he's forcing himself to go there and just say something that doesn't violate fundamental physics and science and Occam's razor and so on, and come up with something that fits, and therefore that's it, right? Bullshit. Okay. Thank you for listening in. Let me have your comments. I was taking a deep dive here. This has been coming for a while, right? The longer time I listen to Bernardo Kastrup, this is where it goes wrong for him, in my opinion, right? Because he avoids any statements of definitions or axioms, anything like that, right? And how he gets there. He can't just slap a new term like objectivity on something without clarifying or justifying, right? This is the kind of bad philosophy I'm here to, first of all, tell myself this is bad philosophy. And if you feel inspired to also go and do your own philosophy, well, brilliant, right? Go do some philosophy. Think for yourself. Don't just eat it raw. Be fucking skeptical. Because most of them don't know what the hell they're doing, right? So, see you in the next one.